welcome to this week's episode of Not D&D, brought to you by EM World. I'm your host, Jessica, and this week we have Emily Greymoore here to tell us about their game, The Cunning Folk. Thanks so much for coming on.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really excited. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here. It's an exciting day because the crowdfunder is launching today. So as you're watching or listening to this on March 31st, this is when the game goes live. So links are in the show notes and on the screen, and we'll be talking about The Cunning Folk and letting you know all about it. Big day. But Emily, before we talk about The Cunning Folk, and I know it's what you want to talk about because launching a crowdfunding project becomes your whole life and it's all consuming. But I'd love to talk a little bit about you and introduce you to the audience because you do many varied things in TTRPG, illustrating, making games, voice acting, content creating, podcasting. I came across you on TikTok. So could you give folks a little intro to kind of what you do in the TTRPG space?
I mostly fuck around and find out in the TTRPG space.
Yeah.
It was so experimental when I first got into the TikTok community, I think like 3-4 years ago, and it was very D&D centric when I first sort of like dived in, but it's gradually grown into this amazing varied space, and I've met some incredible people through it. I got some incredible opportunities through it as well, which is why I've now kind of started on this path of exploration through TTRPGs and the community. So it started off as basically you threw my hat in the ring for a podcast. Well, it was going to be a home game, and then we decided actually let's record this. I think this is actually very, very good. And it's snowballed, and that's Unbalanced Encounters. We started that a couple of years ago. We've now finished our first main campaign, and we are diving into our second season, which is going to be a lot more like Dimension 20 in its seasons, and sort of like its sort of 6-episode kind of like arcs. A lot more manageable, a lot more sustainable, because recording, editing, production on a bi-weekly it was a lot. So we decided not to do that again. We're going to do a bit more of an easy cycle. So through that, I basically built up my confidence in voice acting and found that I enjoyed it, and also got a lot of feedback that said that, you know, you're not half bad at this, Emily, you should probably do this a little bit more and take it a bit more seriously. So that was wild. I never thought that would be something I would ever do, ever. And through that got introduced to more people, started playing different games, being at different tables, and it just whetted the appetite, and I just got more and more into it, wanted to be more creative with it, had a wacky idea for a game that didn't exist yet, and I needed to see it alive and exist. And that was how I started with The Cunning Folk, and I had a very supportive partner who was refusing to let me give it up and not continue and complete it, and I'm very thankful for them for doing that, because I don't know if anyone relates to this outside and is listening to this. Start a project and never finish it. That's been my MO for many, many years.
Yeah.
You know, the initial sort of like flair sort of dies, and you kind of get distracted by something else. The ADHD hobby brain of mine, gotta love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, they insisted I finish it because it was they felt it needed to be in the world, and I actually finished it and went through the whole process, play testing, illustrating the whole thing, and through that found confidence in my illustrating as well. And that's been a whole thing, and a whole process creatively. And I mean, it's just been, like I said, I just feel like I have, through exploration and just saying yes to so many things, have now found myself in this wonderful creative world, and I'm very, very grateful for it. Yeah, it's been a long and winding journey, but I am here.
Indeed. Much like the journeys that we may take in The Cunning Folk. So,
yes. But a lot of chaos also.
Absolutely. Well, we'll dive into The Cunning Folk. But one thing you're talking about there is, like you're saying, you're trying lots of things in the, you know, in creating actual plays and podcasts. And there's a lot of people, I think, that are interested in starting that, but maybe are a bit hesitant. So would you have any guidance or advice for people that are wanting to kind of try that out? Maybe make short form content on TikTok, or maybe like, make podcast actual plays like you do?
I will say start small, start with people that you know, your friends, and also just say yes. You see an opportunity maybe pop up like on your feed. That happened to me a few times where it's just like, oh, they're looking for someone, or they're looking for an extra person or an extra voice, or they're putting out a casting call. Just try. Just go for it. And the worst that's going to happen is they don't get back to you or they say no.
Yeah.
But the best thing is that say yes, and then that can kickstart something interesting for you, even if it's
Mm-hmm.
just experience. And you
Yeah.
experience like, I love this, I want to do this again, or you're like, actually, that bit wasn't for me, but I saw something through that I'm really interested in, and then you can start kind of going down that avenue. Listen, you never know unless you try.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say it's easy doing doing the podcast, especially a long form podcast, is a lot of work. It's so much
Yeah.
work, and trying to get it to you have to learn so much, like the editing and all of the back end marketing is such a huge element of it that everyone
Yes.
hates
Yeah.
doing.
Mm-hmm.
So be prepared for like it being really slow to start with. You're going to have like maybe the first year or more of maybe only a couple of listeners. Um, but if you really want to do it and you really stick with it, then it'll grow and you'll find connections through it. Just reach out to people and just say, hey, I love what you do. I'd love to talk to you about it, even if it's just a mentorship conversation, not necessarily like a working relationship. Whatever. I mean, I I literally was saying this to a friend of mine yesterday. You have to learn how to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, in this world, it's not necessarily what you know, it's who you know. So if you have even one person in your circle who you think is slightly connected to something you're interested in, do not be afraid to reach out to them and say, hey, I need some help or advice, or could you put me in touch with X? Again, worst they're going to say is no.
Yeah.
So, like,
Yeah.
just get in there. Just that's what I would say, and be prepared to work hard because it's a lot.
Yes. Absolutely. Much like creating a tabletop RPG, she says, segueing
Oh wait,
seamlessly
episode.
into the Cunning Folk. Yeah, so we're here to talk about the Cunning Folk, obviously. So
Mm-hmm.
it's launching today, so some people might not have heard of it. So could you give us the introduction? What is the Cunning Folk?
Oh, as you can see there, it is a TTRPG of mischief, magic, and revenge. So basically, in the Cunning Folk, you get to play the creature of folklore and fairy tale instead of being the people that are hunting them down for whatever reason. There have been so many games where you are out to hunt the monster, but now you get to be the monster that is out to hunt the people. So through dark comedy, through absolute childish glee, or whether it's just fully on horror, however you want to play this game, it's a lot of fun, and it's all about getting revenge in the pettiest, almost horrific ways you could think of.
Wonderful. Sounds
Yep.
good. Really clear tone there.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the setting a little bit, because like
Yeah.
being the Cunning Folk, it's kind of Fae inspired, but there's loads of different Fae and folk stories from all over the world, and there's
Yeah.
different flavors and brands of it. So what does it look like in the Cunning Folk?
So the Cunning Folk explicitly, so obviously I was born and raised in the British Isles and fell in love with the goblins and ghouls of the British Isles, but I explicitly wanted to make sure that the Cunning Folk was not British centric.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make sure that it could be used and skinned in any kind of culture or folklore. So the good thing about the Cunning Folk is that it can be used for anything that you want. I was watching a wonderful stream the other day where they had this wonderful African sort of inspired folk, and it was
Okay.
so cool. It was a very kind of crocodilian like
Yeah.
creature, and it was amazing. It was really really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it the archetypes, so like the playbooks or the sort of
Mm-hmm.
classes, I guess if you want to call it that,
Mm-hmm.
um, are inspired by fae and sort of like folkloric stories, but can be skinned however you want. So they're
Okay.
very open to interpretation, basically, and it's very encouraged that you can either pick one you already know or make up your own. So
Fantastic. Yeah. Love that. And what was your inspiration for kind of creating the game? I know you mentioned, like you said, being the British Isles folk and fae stories, but what else? What were your main inspirations you had for making the game?
I'll be honest, Vesson was
Oh,
my
yeah, I love that
inspiration.
game. Yeah.
When it came out, I saw the artwork, I saw the kind of like the vibes, and I was obsessed. I was in love, and I was like, oh my God, this game, because it was all like, you know, the brooding dark creatures of, you know, and they have various sort of like books for various places in the world. And when I first saw it, I thought, finally, yes, I get to be the thing in the woods. No, again, it was you find the things and either parlay or hunt them or whatever it is, but they are the bad guys yet again. And I was like, no, I'm done of them being the bad guys. I want to be them. I want them to be the ones who get revenge and justice for once. And so I was like, that's it. I've got to make this game. And just flip the narrative on its head. You know, every fairy tale has the Rumpelstiltskin, but you know what? What if Rumpelstiltskin was actually just done bad because they went against the contract that they had signed and agreed to at the beginning? It wasn't his fault.
Yeah.
So, you know, how about I get to be Rumpelstiltskin and get my revenge on the prissy princess who wouldn't give me their child. At the very end.
Fair enough.
So, yeah, it's yeah, and fairy tales are supposed to be sort of like, well, I say supposed to be. There's always like a bit of a moral to the story.
Yeah.
But oftentimes I feel like the wrong person really kind of wins if you're looking at it morally in a lot of these instances. Because, you know, the fae are sometimes just done bad. And it's, you know, they're just acting the way they would if you were, you know, someone said something rude to you, someone did something mean to you, they broke a promise. Yeah, so I just thought it was a wonderful thing to kind of really hone in on and see the other side of the story. Yeah, and get some freaking justice. I feel like a lot of people are in need of like wanting some justice in this world right now as well. So this feels very satisfying, and the whole game is about getting satisfaction. So yeah, it definitely needed, I think.
So we're like you say, we're playing the Cunning Folk. So these fey creatures, and character creation is you have some archetypes, but like you say, you can structure and theme them. And character creation isn't very heavy. It's generally like more of a rules-lite sort of game. So could you walk us through, if I sat down at a table and we were going to play, what does making a character look like for me?
So you just need to bring your imagination with you, basically. So the 5 archetypes you have, let me see if I can remember off the top of my head. I should be able to remember. This is a challenge. Crone, Beast, Light, Trickster, and Elemental. There we go. So you basically are going to look at those 5. They all have their own sort of magical abilities, kind of loosely based around their theme. And you can say, okay, I really love the Elemental, for example. It can communicate with animals, it can make things grow really quickly, it can make things rot really quickly. It has a lot of these kind of like interesting elements. I love that. Now, how am I going to, what does my fae look like? What does my folk look like that is an elemental? Is it going to be very ent like? Is it going to be like a water sprite? Is it, you know, you can really kind of like play with it, you can skin it however you want. But the key is, when you make a character, you have to remember that character is going to level up 5 levels, and as it does, it grows both physically and sort of magically. So when you're creating a character, you've got to think, okay, it's going to start off at maybe like 2 foot tall, very small, maybe like 1 foot, 2 foot, and then could potentially grow to something like 15 foot. So if you think about it as like a Pokemon and it evolving over time, you get to basically, you can mentally do it, you can draw it, you can just like whatever you want to do, kind of map out what that evolution looks like as you grow in power and size.
Yeah.
How do you evolve? How do you change? What does that physically look like, aesthetically look like,
Mm-hmm.
and you can really have fun with that. Some people just do like, you start off very kind of human looking and then
Yeah.
become more monstrous, like a bit more Minotaur-esque or sort of
Yeah.
werewolf-esque as they grow.
Mm-hmm.
Others are just like, I'm a little drop of water in a teacup. And then I end up as this like typhoon sort of covered in like seaweed and like, have this little tiny wee teacup
Mm-hmm.
just on the head after they've grown so large. And that's the good thing about it. It really is up to your imagination, what you've been
Mm-hmm.
inspired by through your own tales that you've
Mm-hmm.
heard or what you're really excited by.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it. I love seeing what people have drawn. I've seen a few things through like play tests and where people have shown me what their players did, and they're so good. They're so fantastic. I love it so much.
Yeah, I love that you got a Pokemon reference in there, because
Yes.
I didn't see that coming this interview. I didn't read through the Cunning Folk and think, oh yeah, Pokemon was the reference, but it made sense.
It's
It made
literally,
sense.
yeah, it's the best way to describe the level, the
Yeah.
evolution sort of system. If you think of like a Pokemon slowly kind of like changing as it gets more powerful, that's basically it. But 5 levels instead of 3.
Yeah. And interestingly, we're talking about leveling up, which we're all very used to in games, but interestingly, you have leveling down in the
I
game.
do.
Could you talk a little bit
Yes.
about that and why that's there? Because I imagine a lot of people hear about that and they're like, why would I want to do that?
Yeah, why would I want to level back down?
Yeah.
That was a really interesting game mechanic we toyed with a lot because I didn't want leveling back down to be a bad thing.
Yeah.
So basically with the Cunning Folk, you have different a different skill set
Mm-hmm.
like no matter what level you are. So the whole key to the Cunning Folk is you have to basically go about your revenge in the mortal world without being seen. The
Mm-hmm.
Fae and all kind of creatures in that world kind of act unseen to mortals. So as when you're very small, when you're the first couple of levels, it's easier to do things unseen because you're so small. So the whole kind of
Mm-hmm.
like success rolls, you don't need to try so hard because you're so small and it's easier for you to do.
Mm-hmm.
When you're bigger, there's a lot bigger chance of you doing something and being seen because you're a lumbering giant now and you may
Yes.
not be able to do the thing you want so easily without drawing attention to yourself. So there's that. So the smaller you are, the more mischievous you can be and get away with it.
Yeah.
But on the other side, the bigger you are, the more powerful your magic is. So you
Mm-hmm.
can do more incredible things, but there is also a risk of being seen. So you can fluctuate up and down in this wonderful way
Mm-hmm.
throughout play without being penalized for it.
Mm-hmm.
So having a group of folk, so if you've got 4 players, for example, you can have a wonderful mix throughout and really utilize every end of the scale and everything in between.
Yeah.
Because you could have one person who is still maybe level 1 or 2, doing all these like cheeky little things, while another one is somewhere else doing something much bigger and more, to distract people while something else is happening, and you can really play with that. But the good thing is, and I wanted to make this very clear, you don't level down when you fail.
Mm-hmm.
So the mechanics of the game, you have a pool of d6.
Mm-hmm.
You get 1 dice per level. So at level 1, you have 1 dice. Level 2, 2 dice. 3 dice.
Mm-hmm. Can figure out the rest. I'm there.
Yep.
Yeah.
You get the idea.
Yeah.
And the GM or the storyteller will say, okay, what you're trying to do is going to need 2 successes. So that would mean you need to roll a 4, 5, or 6 with
Mm-hmm.
2 of your dice from your dice pool.
Yeah.
So when you're level 1, obviously you can't do that. That's too difficult for you. So you've got to make sure you can only do things that need 1 success.
Yeah.
You succeed, you level up. Amazing. If you fail, however, you don't level back down. It just didn't quite turn out how you wanted. And then you get a point of luck, which you can use to add or remove dice later.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you over succeed, that's when you level down. So you did that thing you wanted to do so well, someone saw you do it because you were like, something incredible happened that drew attention to you. Whether your magic kind of popped off a little bit too hard, or you cackled a bit too loudly at your success, whatever that is.
Yeah.
The player gets to narrate how that happened and how they were seen, and then they kind of shrink back down.
Yeah.
So it's this, yeah. So you're always going to be rewarded when,
Hmm.
and that's why we say kind of failing forward. You're
Yes.
rewarded when you fail, and because it's never really failing. It's just like
Yeah.
here's some luck, try again.
Hmm.
And the storyteller's job is basically to say, hey, you didn't completely fail. This isn't D&D. There's no crit fails in this game.
Hmm.
um, this is just how it turned out instead. It's just it worked out a little bit differently than you were expecting, and
Yeah.
that's obviously up to the storyteller to do what they want to do and flavor that how they want to flavor it.
Of
But yeah,
course.
it's a really fun system, and like I said,
Hmm.
watching it being played and playing it, it's just hilarious. It's always so funny.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I think it's great.
Of course. Yeah, as you
I
should.
think it's
Well,
great.
yeah, absolutely. You should be proud of the things you make to put them out there.
I
I
hope
really
that was
like that.
clear for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. I really love that luck mechanic you mentioned, because failing forward is something that people always give to game masters and storytellers as advice. It's, to say keep the story moving. If something,
Hmm.
bad or doesn't go as planned, it makes the story happen. But I love that the game actually has mechanical support to make that happen. So it's really easy for you as somebody running the game to kind of lean into that. And like you say, it doesn't feel like a punishment from the player. It doesn't feel like, I want to do this thing, you can't. Oh, because there's
Yeah,
nothing less fun than that. Whereas
yeah,
this does the opposite of that. So
yeah.
I really like that about it. So like we mentioned, it's a really simple kind of clean system. Was there a reason you chose to make something kind of more rules light? Was that for accessibility, or particular tone you were trying to get?
Yeah, honestly, selfishly, my accessibility.
No, fair enough, fair
uh,
enough.
I'm sure there are plenty of people in the space that are a bit like me, where it's I love a good chunky TTRPG,
Sure.
but I really struggle with games that are too crunchy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a lot to learn, it's a lot to pick up. You have to really kind of go through a massive like
Yeah.
dungeon master's guide, right? To
Mm-hmm.
really figure out all of the rules. It's too much. My brain, and I worry that I'm not getting all the rules right, and then it's a
Yeah.
barrier to play
Yeah.
because I'm worried about getting it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other end of the scale, you've got the sort of one-page RPGs, which I've tried to GM a few times, and
Mm-hmm.
I struggle with the lack of structure because I'm
Right.
just like, it should I be doing, what am I supposed to do in this situation? How do
Mm-hmm.
I what is actually the rule for this? This isn't clarified, this isn't
Sure.
explained. How do I rule that as a GM? Um, so it's I wanted to find a really nice middle ground.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, selfishly for me, where
Yeah.
there was enough structure there where it's like, here is all the kind of things, here's some examples of how you would use this. I mean, I can't cover every eventuality, obviously,
Sure.
um, but also these are the three rules you need to know
Mm-hmm.
to be able to play it, and these three rules should basically see you through whatever circumstances come up.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. So I wanted, yeah, like I said, that accessibility of like you've got enough to help you and support you, but
Yeah.
without being overwhelming.
Yeah.
And for veterans or new people to TTRPGs, I think it hits a really nice sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
So if anyone's like me who needs that in the middle, then this game is for you.
Yeah.
I wrote this for you.
Perfect. I noticed it feels really nice for a one-shot session to run,
Yeah.
because of the nature of the theme and the stories, and really nicely for any game that's a one-shot. It looks like there's not too much prep to do as a GM, because like you say, that becomes a barrier for play. If
Yeah.
you want to run a game but you're like, oh, I'm busy, I've got work, I've got this going on, I can't spend ages
Mm.
preparing for it. What's really nice about the Cunning Folk is that you're not going to have to spend a whole lot of time as a game master
Yeah.
or storyteller prepping for that, which is nice.
Yeah.
But could you walk us through like what a session would look like? So we've kind of got the idea of it. We're going to be the Cunning Folk. We're going to be being mischievous, enacting revenge. But if I was going to run the game, how would I structure a session? Like what
Sure.
would we be doing?
Yeah, so if you were the GM or the storyteller of the game,
Mm-hmm.
all you need to do is think up the BBEG.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically it. So
Mm-hmm.
you are going to say, okay, if we're going to go for the classic, the bad guy in this is going to be an evil king who is doesn't believe in the superstition, doesn't want anyone to do any of their offerings or rituals anymore to the Cunning Folk, and he's banned all of that kind of thing, and he's making everyone's life a misery. You say to the players, this is the bad guy. Tell me how he has personally insulted or hurt you. And they go around the table and they will think up a way of like, okay, let's say he cut down my tree to build his throne. Right. Yeah. So that's one person's thing. Another person can say he imprisoned someone who worshipped me or who would leave offerings to me, and it's unjust and it's not fair. Someone, whatever. And everyone can pick up a reasoning that's personal to them. And then they basically, as a group, decide, right, we all have a personal vendetta against this guy, as big or as petty. I mean, one person might be like, he looked at me funny once and I didn't like it.
Rude.
Whatever it is, he stepped on a flower and I was really fucking upset about it. Yeah. Whatever it is. And they say, okay, together we're gonna figure out how to take this man down. So the storyteller then facilitates that. So the first phase, after they've kind of gone around and sort of said, yeah, this is my vendetta, they kind of introduce their characters, introduce them to each other if they, don't know each other kind of yet. And then it's the recon phase after that. So they basically go into, say, the village, the town, whatever it is, and cause as much mischief as they can to basically gather information on what makes this BBG, the king, tick, what's important to him, what are his weaknesses, where do you go to find that out? So that's completely up to them and their imagination where they want to take that. The storyteller might leave some breadcrumbs for them to, help them kind of figure out where they want to go next. Maybe go to the kitchens and you find that he's lactose intolerant. Great, I could use that. That's a fun one I might be able to use. Maybe he's about to host a party for some dignitaries from around other kingdoms, and there's a tense potential war brewing on the horizon, and you could maybe fan the flames of that, right? There's a wedding coming up that you could crash, whatever it is, right? You can find out this information. And the folk then basically go, okay, we found out all of this. Let's now make his life miserable. So the whole point of them now is like using this information to get revenge. And as a group, they can decide how devastating that revenge can be. Okay. They might want to make it just light and silly and just make him really, a mockery of him, make him very embarrassed if that's the kind of table vibe. It could be dark if they really want. If the table was into that kind of thing, it can be as grim dark as you want, or it can be as light and funny as you want. This game is great for kids as well, so if you wanted to keep it light and silly, it's a great way to do. And then that's when you get onto the second phase, which is basically doing the thing that they set out to do. It's just like, right, this is the plan. Let's enact this plan. And the storyteller facilitates enacting that plan through however they want. And again, through mischief, magic, mayhem, chaos, it does. And it basically ends when all of the players are satisfied that they've gotten the revenge they want. They're like, okay, I think he's done now. I think I'm happy now. This is enough. And then the storyteller wraps up saying, and this is the end result. This is what it looks like. Maybe a few years down the line, this is what it looks like for you. And that's the end of the game. So like you said, it's very, very good for that one shot. If you've got a few hours, an afternoon, and you want to play a little game that has a very nice bow kind of like ending, it's great. But also if you want to play it over a couple of sessions, if you want to play the long con, if it's a bit more complicated, I've had one game where it's who they thought was the BBEG was actually just a puppet for someone else, and then they'd have to then go on to another kind of session to figure out who it really was. So up to the storyteller, up to the table, however you want to play it, but it's basically that. Just what did they do to annoy you, to piss you off? Find out everything about them, and then using that against them, and then getting satisfaction at the end. So it's basically those three stages. But yeah, that's the game. Nice and easy for a storyteller.
Fab. Yeah. Well, it sounds great. I mean, as we've been talking today, I mentioned earlier, the game is live on Kickstarter today. So people can go to the links in the show notes or on the screen to go get a copy. So what's involved in the Kickstarter campaign? So if we pick up a copy, what do we get?
So there's going to be a few tiers, obviously. So you can get just the digital copy if you would like just the PDF download. There is the physical copy, which
Mm-hmm.
ta-da!
Oh, wow.
Doesn't it look lovely? So it's 32 pages, fully illustrated, and you get that for the next tier. There's also some tiers that have some limited edition art that I had
Oh,
made
nice.
from a wonderful artist in the community, UK based as well.
Mm-hmm.
I can give you the details if you want to link them in this.
Yeah,
But
sounds good.
Rossi, amazing artist. I saw them pop up on my feed, and it was all that kind of goblin, fae, like
Mm-hmm.
critter sort of art, and I was like, oh my god, this is perfect. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, Rossi, will you do me? Will you do some art for me? And they're like, hell yeah, this is great. So I basically the art, they
Mm-hmm.
designed their own character, and they did the 5 evolutions of that character, and that's going to be a poster for whoever wants that particular tier.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's really cute. There's other ones which you get to donate community copies as well,
Mm-hmm.
which is really lovely. But I'm keeping it very simple. That's it. I'm not going down the route of dice because that's very expensive and very hard to
Yes,
do.
it is. Yeah,
For
it's
my
a whole
first
other thing.
Kickstarter, I'm keeping it very simple. So that's the only kind of offerings at the moment. Kind of digital book, physical book, community copies, and the artwork
Yes,
is what I'm offering for the
sounds
Kickstarter.
good.
But yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah, keeping it simple for your first Kickstarter, always an excellent idea. And I guess part of the reason you're not doing any stretch goals or anything like that is because the game is already made. It's done. Like you said, you were
Yes.
holding it in your hands just there.
Yeah.
So people aren't going to have to wait a long time to get the rewards then. So if they were
Yep.
to back it now, when are they getting their, famits on the game?
The famous. So as long as printing and distribution doesn't go wrong in any area, I've put an October sort of like mark
Wow.
on it for everyone to get it. Indie Press Revolution are helping me distribute, which is going to be
Mm-hmm.
wonderful, and I'm really excited. So they're going to be stocking it after that point as well, so you'll be able to get it there afterwards if you don't back the Kickstarter. But please back the Kickstarter.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so it should all come out to everybody as long as there's no hiccups. But everything's done.
Great.
Yeah, it's just ready for printing now.
Well,
So
that's so
hell yeah.
exciting. Well, Emily, thank you so much for taking the time
Thank
to come and talk to
you.
me because I know running a crowdfunding campaign is a big, all-encompassing thing. So your time is taken up a lot at the moment. So thank you for coming on and talk to us.
All right,
And
thank you.
congratulations on launching today. And
Thank you.
anyone watching and listening, if this has sounded vaguely interesting to you, go and have a look at the crowdfunder because the best way to support indie tabletop creators is to buy their stuff if you can. But yes, thank you so much for coming on. One last question I have for you before you go, though, and that's if you have any other tabletop RPGs you'd like to give a shout out to or recommend. And the rules, of course, can't be a game that you've made, and of course, not D&D.
I am going to give a shout out to my wonderful friend Ryan, Perils and Princesses. If you haven't played it, you absolutely should. He is launching. I think it's coming to Kickstarter pretty soon if it hasn't already come to Kickstarter. I think there's the sign up is available. But they're launching the Goblin Market, which is a little adventure sort of DLC thing you can get for the game. And it's so up my street and it's amazing. And I've met him and I've played the game and it's so good. So if you want to be a badass princess in a fairy tale, like a badass folk in a fairy tale, then Perils and Princesses is your game.
Wonderful. Great recommendation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Emily, we've come to the end of our time. So I'm going to say thank you so much for coming on. Best of luck with the crowdfunder. And yeah, really excited to get my hands on my copy in October. So thanks very much for coming on.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.